June 1943, a muddy field. A hatch opens, and the enemy's machine lies exposed, an M4 Sherman. For German engineers, this was more than a trophy. It was a live classroom. They photographed the hull, measured bolt patterns, and logged details that went straight back to ordnance workshops. At first glance, the Sherman looked ordinary. Not the heaviest armor, not the most powerful gun, but up close its engineering choices were obvious: standardized parts, easily accessed filters, and a suspension that tolerated rough ground. Those choices weren't accidental. They were the product of an industrial system built to keep machines moving, not make a single masterpiece. Today, we'll follow that inspection table by table, report by report.
The engineers' notebooks didn't just list faults, they revealed a pattern. Inside the turret, radios and wiring used standard connectors. In the engine bay, mass-produced blocks and familiar automotive layouts made field repairs straightforward. German reports repeatedly noted accessibility. Filters, fluid points, and modular subassemblies could be swapped with basic toolkits. That modularity turned battlefield breakdowns into temporary setbacks rather than permanent losses. A Sherman could limp to a recovery point, be cannibalized for parts, or be back on the road after a depot-level fix. For technicians who faced shortages of spare parts in time, these were not small advantages. They were force multipliers that would shape battles long after that captured tank had been towed away.
The initial phase of German analysis zeroed in on the tank's theoretical combat power. The Sherman's main armament, the 75mm M3 low-velocity gun, was correctly assessed as lacking the penetration needed to defeat heavy German armor, like the Panther or Tiger. German test reports highlighted that their own 75mm anti-tank weapons, like the PaK-40, achieved far superior performance, using larger propellant charges and longer barrels. Similarly, the Sherman's armor, averaging around 81mm frontally, was deemed significantly thinner and easily defeated by high-velocity German rounds. The Germans expected this technical disparity. The armor plates of the captured M4A1 were often stenciled with measurements and angles for meticulous ballistic testing. This focus on maximum individual specifications was entirely typical of the Wehrmacht's design philosophy. They were looking for confirmation of American technological inferiority.
However, a different picture emerged when German analysts looked beyond the raw numbers. A critical study published in the German weekly newspaper WWII in June 1943 conceded the merits of the General Sherman, stating that German soldiers know the dangers represented by these tanks when they appear in large numbers. The report subtly acknowledged that overwhelming quantity could negate individual technical advantage. But the true shock came from operational testing at Kummersdorf. German engineers had anticipated finding technical flaws. Instead, they found an industrial strength they could not match. The Sherman simply kept running. While the Panther impressed on paper, its complex, resource-intensive engineering meant it was constantly breaking down. The Sherman, by contrast, embodied a devastating, unstoppable American industrial maturity, proof that Germany had already lost the war of production.
The engineers' notebooks didn't just list faults. They revealed a pattern. Inside the turret, radios and wiring used standard connectors. In the engine bay, mass-produced blocks and familiar automotive layouts made field repairs straightforward. German reports repeatedly noted accessibility. Filters, fluid points, and modular sub-assemblies could be swapped with basic toolkits. That modularity turned battlefield breakdowns into temporary setbacks rather than permanent losses. A Sherman could limp to a recovery point, be cannibalized for parts, or be back on the road after a depot-level fix. For technicians who faced shortages of spare parts and time, these were not small advantages. They were force multipliers that would shape battles long after that captured tank had been towed away.
The truly shattering revelation for German engineers was not the Sherman's combat strength, but its mechanical endurance. German test reports documented a shocking truth that exposed the fatal flaw in their own heavy tank programs. While Panther and Tiger tanks impressed on paper, they frequently broke down, often achieving only 20 to 40% operational readiness in the field. The Sherman, by stark contrast, simply kept running. The most notorious weak point in the German designs was the transmission and final drive assembly. The Panther's complex drives were known to fail within only hundreds of kilometers of operation. The Sherman utilized robust, proven components, such as durable herringbone gears that routinely lasted for thousands of kilometers. This disparity confirmed a systemic error. German political demands for spectacular specifications had overridden sound engineering principles, resulting in complexity that was strategically debilitating.
The Kummersdorf analysis went beyond individual components. It exposed a logistical catastrophe. The systemic failure of German parts culminated in massive non-combat losses. Documentation from the January 1945 Panzer Commission confirmed a widespread mechanical collapse across the front, reporting 500 defective Panzer IV final drives, 370 defective Panther drives, and 100 Tiger failures. Tanks abandoned due to purely internal breakdowns, not enemy fire. The Sherman's design was inherently robust, based on decades of sophisticated American automotive engineering. This modularity meant that mechanics with basic training could maintain and repair them. Crucially, the U.S. faced no systemic shortage of spares. This was unlike the German forces, who were forced to cannibalize damaged Tigers because records show only one spare engine and transmission was produced for every 10 vehicles. Operational availability, the German reports concluded, mattered more than raw specifications.
The deep dive into the captured Sherman's internal architecture forced the German High Command to confront a difficult truth about its own strategic thinking. Following a demonstration involving Allied armor at the Hillersleben facility in June 1943, even Albert Speer, Hitler's Minister of Armaments, admitted the Sherman's functional effectiveness. Speer later detailed his observations in a November 1944 internal report from the Italian front, highlighting what mattered most: mobility. He explicitly noted that American vehicles climb mountains that our panzer crews consider impassable, crediting the Sherman's powerful engine relative to its overall weight. This contradicted the German fixation on weight and wide tracks as the sole indicators of cross-country capability. The Sherman's capacity for sustained, reliable maneuverability, rather than its maximum speed, provided a decisive strategic edge often overlooked by German designers obsessed with brute force specifications. The ability to keep running was intrinsically linked to American logistical support. The durability observed in the Sherman was a consequence of the immense maturity of American industry, which extended its standardized, robust, and proven component designs from the civilian automotive base directly to the military. The Sherman's design was not accidental. It was intentionally restricted in size to ensure rapid strategic mobility.
Constraints on its height, width, and weight were set to ensure it could be rapidly transported across European infrastructure, such as standard bridges and roads, a practical logistical constraint German engineers often ignored in their complex, heavy designs. This foresight ensured the tank could be deployed rapidly and kept operational, prioritizing strategic availability over marginal increases in armor thickness. This philosophy, building a highly reliable, logistically supported weapon, was devastating proof that Germany had lost the industrial war, regardless of the technical sophistication of a single Tiger or Panther.
While the German engineers dissected the mechanical components, the greatest flaw they identified in the early design was its survivability. The 1943 M4A1 captured at Kummersdorf was an early model, notorious for bursting into flames when penetrated due to the dry storage of ammunition in vulnerable hull sponsons. This flaw earned the tank the derisive nickname the Ronson Lighter. American forces rapidly recognized this critical vulnerability from combat reports. The response, however, was an unprecedented act of iterative innovation, the introduction of the wet stowage system, designated with a W suffix. Starting in January 1944, new production tanks stored ammunition rounds inside racks surrounded by a mixture of water and glycol, which dramatically reduced the chance of propellant fire upon penetration.
This internal improvement, the wet stowage system, was a fundamental revolution in tank survivability, but it provided the perfect intelligence cover. The modification did not change the Sherman's external appearance, and German intelligence, having formed its conclusions based on the 1943 War Daddy II specimen, failed entirely to recognize the updated, resilient versions entering combat in Normandy in 1944. This became a catastrophic intelligence blind spot. German analysts were reportedly looking only for dramatic changes and missed this subtle but fundamental shift. Intelligence doctrine remained dangerously obsolete, instructing German crews to target the Sherman's sponsons for maximum effect, the very location where the vulnerable dry racks had been, but where the protected wet stowage now lay. This systematic error meant German tactical assumptions about American tank losses remained fatally flawed throughout the final year of the war, allowing the U.S. to maintain a decisive edge in combat availability.
The failure to spot the wet stowage system meant German intelligence was fighting an obsolete enemy. The combination of the Sherman's high reliability and its overwhelming production scale became the decisive force multiplier. With over 49,000 units produced, the Sherman ensured numerical superiority, allowing Allied forces to sustain combat attrition that the German army could never match. While an individual Panther or Tiger might theoretically overmatch a Sherman, the overall Sherman system was superior. Its high operational readiness, supported by American industrial maturity and robust components, guaranteed that where one German heavy tank was constantly awaiting a specialist repair crew, multiple Shermans were present on the battlefield. The American focus on fielding a reliable, maintainable weapon rather than a perfect one proved to be a strategy that the Wehrmacht's complex, fragile machines could not possibly defeat.
The Sherman platform also proved highly adaptable, accepting necessary late-war upgrades that directly answered the initial Kummersdorf criticisms. These upgrades included the installation of the higher-velocity 76mm M1 gun and the adoption of the horizontal volute spring suspension, or HVSS, found on variants like the M4A3 E8 Easy 8. These improvements were specifically designed to counter the increasingly heavy German armor encountered in 1944 and 1945. Ultimately, the reliable M4 system was validated by combat statistics. Post-war analysis by the U.S. Army Ballistic Research Laboratory suggested that against the mighty Panther tank, the later 76mm armed Shermans achieved a kill ratio of 3.6 to 1 in their favor. This statistical reversal underscores that better crew training, superior tactics, and most critically, a robust and adaptable platform capable of always reaching the fight, compensated entirely for the initial deficiencies observed in 1943.
The Kummersdorf examination provided Germany with the technical blueprint for the tank it should have built, a reliable, maintainable platform. The failure to pivot to this philosophy led to one final, ironic validation of the Sherman's operational value: desperation. Facing catastrophic domestic production shortfalls, German forces widely deployed captured Allied armor, known as Beutepanzer, trophy tanks. This was the ultimate confirmation of Kummersdorf's reliability findings. Captured Shermans saw intense service in pivotal, desperate operations. During the Battle of the Bulge, SS troops utilized 10 captured Shermans in Operation Greif, infiltrating American lines to sow confusion and perform sabotage. This required German High Command to place significant operational trust in the Sherman's proven ability to run reliably behind enemy lines. The German reliance on Beutepanzer lasted until the very end. Shermans captured as late as March 1945, including tanks lost during Task Force Bomb's ill-fated raid, were pressed into service for the final defense of Germany, fighting in places like Aschaffenburg and even during the Battle of Berlin. One captured M4A3 was documented as being knocked out by an American M36 Jackson tank destroyer in Bavaria near the war's conclusion. Memoir accounts from German veterans, including former Tiger commanders, indicated that while they considered the Sherman's armor weak, they were impressed by its high-quality interior and useful gun, describing it as a halfway viable combat tank. The Kummersdorf verdict, although initially interpreted as a tactical comparison of firepower, ultimately delivered a damning industrial prognosis for Nazi Germany. Reliability, industrial maturity, and logistical support, not maximum technical specifications, defined victory in armored warfare.